Fellas, we are finally here. We are finally at week one. This is the time that we can actually talk about some real football, and I can stop, yapping about hypothetical situations. Week one fantasy football running back rankings tier list, talking about some top flex decisions, some matchups, some injuries, usage, all that stuff will be broken down in this video. The concept of this video is a tier list rankings format going in the order that I would start these players. So if you roster Raheem Mostert and James Cook and you're wondering who to start, I have Raheem Mostert at RB19, James Cook at 24, which means I would start Raheem Mostert. These were done from a PPR/half PPR frame of mind as well. And throughout this video, I will be breaking down a couple superlatives like my start of the week, some deeper flex plays at the end of the video, any injury updates that we have, matchups, spreads, and all that good stuff as we get going throughout the season. Of course, with the running back position, I'll be breaking down backfield usage trends as well. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into the running back tier list. You guys can see it on the screen here. The locked-in running back starts, these running backs 1 to 12, these first two tiers here. All of these guys, I'm sure, are in your lineup. As far as who could overperform and who could underperform, I'll kind of break that down briefly here. Pollard, Jacobs, Etienne, Bijan Robinson, and Derrick Henry all have top 12 matchups in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position and rush defense DVOA. That is our strength of schedule metric. Of course, if you guys want to get access to all that data, check out the pinned comment down below. Defenses are going to change year over year. So for week one, we're going off of last year's data. So it's not really going to be the most accurate for week one. But as we get throughout the season, the best info we have will definitely come to light by week 6, week 7, week 8, once we know more information about these teams. For this top tier of running backs, we also have some high over-unders in the case of Travis Etienne for that Jags-Colts game, the Chargers game with Austin Eckler. Browns-Bengals has a high over-under as well for Nick Chubb. Tony Pollard and Saquon Barkley for the Giants-Cowboys game on Sunday Night Football has a pretty high over-under as well, so those guys should be in some pretty good game environments. But Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and Nick Chubb are also facing some stingy run defenses. So those are the matchups. Those are kind of the qualitative factors that we want to look into for these top guys. I should definitely talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, considering he is my RB11 in this tier list ranking, and he was locked in on Thursday Night Football. Tough performance in week one. Didn't get a whole lot of touches, only 9 touches. He was outsnapped 25% to 75% in favor of David Montgomery, but I would not be too worried. It was a rookie running back in his first game. His workload will increase as the season goes along, and if your resident Jahmyr Gibbs manager is panicking, I'm sure I will talk about him next week on the trade targets video. So definitely keep that in mind for Jahmyr Gibbs. Tough week, but he should bounce back. Closing out this tier of running backs is J.K. Dobbins, who is my start of the week at the position. Texans are a run funnel defense. They were bottom 5 in the NFL last year, but they were very good against the pass. Ravens implied to score the third most points on the week one slate with 26.75, and they are 10-point home favorites against a rookie quarterback with the Houston Texans in his first NFL start. So I'm really excited to see how this backfield shakes out. I'm really excited to see how much work J.K. Dobbins ends up getting, but I am very confident this week that he can be efficient as he's done to this point in his career, is be efficient pretty much anytime he's touched the ball, but really, really intrigued to see what J.K. Dobbins' workload looks like. So those are the locked and loaded starters. Let's get into the real decision points. I'm sure if you guys have those players, you are starting them, but let's get into the high-end RB2 tier. We kick off this tier with Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon was a guy who's no secret I was low on coming into the season. However, he might get out to a pretty decent start here for a sell high opportunity. So if you guys, ended up drafting Joe Mixon, you found our channel afterwards, and you're like, damn, these guys don't like Joe Mixon, I should probably sell him. This should be a good opportunity for you to do so. The Browns ranked dead last against fantasy running backs last year. They were one of the easiest matchups for the fantasy running back position. Bengals are implied for 25.5 points in a 48.5 point over-under game, with 72% of the sharps betting on the over as well. So we're looking at a game that's expected to be a lot of points. Joe Mixon could have an opportunity to punch in some touchdowns here. Probably not going to be very efficient because he's Joe Mixon, but good opportunity for him to get into the end zone in this game. Running back 14 in my rankings is Kenneth Walker, and he popped up on the injury report on Thursday with a groin injury, but he was not listed on the Seahawks' final injury report after today's practices Friday as I'm recording this. It appears he'll be a full go with no limitations. So if you have Zach Charbonnet, you probably can't start him. You are firing up Kenneth Walker as a top 15 running back. Definitely interested to see how this split shakes out early on. Rams should be pretty bad without Cooper Kupp, I would imagine. So good time of possession probably incoming for the Seattle Seahawks. And like we saw with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, I expect the veteran to have the lenience over the rookie in this backfield. RB15 in my rankings is Aaron Jones. This Bears-Packers game is definitely going to be interesting. Both teams have something to prove. Justin Fields, of course, coming into this season with something to prove. And then Jordan Love, first NFL season really where he's going to be the Packers QB1, going to be the Packers starter. I expect a heavy leniency on A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones in this game, so I really do love Aaron Jones against the Bears. The Bears were awful against fantasy running backs last year, 29th in adjusted fantasy points allowed and rush defense DVOA combined. Good option this week to catch some passes as well because Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs are injured right now. We don't know if they're going to play. I think both are listed officially as questionable. So really like Aaron Jones this week to potentially catch some passes. Next we get into RB16, and I kind of talked about this Texans-Ravens game already, but with Dameon Pierce, he's my RB16 right now because he saw such great preseason usage with, 85% of the long down and distance snaps, actually getting some work on third down, not just your early down hammer, early down banger like he was as a rookie last year. If that continues, he's going to basically be matchup proof because that kind of workload, will indicate that you're going to be a week in and week out top 15, top 12 running back. I'm ranking him a little bit lower just to be conservative this week, but if he can perform, Pierce will absolutely have a higher ceiling than people think, especially if CJ Stroud maybe picks it up a little bit towards the end of the season. Likely a negative game script, though, in week one, going up against the Ravens on the road. They're 10-point underdogs. I don't expect a big-time game as far as carry volume for Dameon Pierce, but the Texans are kind of feisty, and especially in week one, you never know what's going to happen. RB17 in my rankings was Isaiah Pacheco, who played on Thursday night. He was locked in there at RB17, played on Thursday Night Football, and only had 9.4 PPR points, but we did see some encouraging usage out of Isaiah Pacheco. He had 12 touches, 4 targets as well, and almost half of the team's routes, which is not really something that I expected to see. I expected him to just get early down work and then Jerick McKinnon to work in on third down. We did kind of see like a full-blown running back by committee as Clyde Edwards-Helaire ended up starting the game. Isaiah Pacheco had the most snaps, and he also had some targets here and there. But I will say this was his first game back since being out for most of training camp. Isaiah Pacheco was really not there for all of training camp, so it makes some sense that he would be eased in early on in the season. I think he could be a sneaky value buy if your resident, Isaiah Pacheco manager is really panicking about the usage. RB18 to close out this tier here is Alexander Mattison. The Vikings, such a good team situation this week. They're tied for 4th with almost 26 points implied by Vegas right now. Alexander Madison's workload's a little bit of a mystery. I think a lot of people are just going to assume that he's going to get Dalvin Cook's workload. I'm curious to see how much will Ty Chandler be involved, how much will the other running backs there be involved, but he's definitely a fine RB2 start this week because I do think the Vikings will put up some points against my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next, we get into the next tier of running backs. And again, anybody from this previous tier that I just talked about, I would start over all of the guys in this tier. Hence, that's how I do my rankings. I'm not doing them to win a rankings contest. I'm doing them based on who I would start and who I would sit, accounting for factors of like ceiling and floor and, neutral team situations and all that kind of stuff. So my low-end RB2s tier, the guy that kicks this off is Raheem Mostert. If you drafted Breece Hall or Javonte Williams, this is exactly the type of guy that I told you guys to draft late for this reason, because I do think Raheem Mostert's a really good start this week. It's 51 points, according to Vegas, in the over-under for the Chargers and Dolphins game. 83% of the money right now in Vegas is on the over as well, so we're looking at a very high-scoring game. His only backfield competition in week one is Devon Achane, who wasn't listed on the final injury report, so he should be a full go, but he is still a rookie. And as I mentioned with, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, rookies tend to, get eased into their first game, and Jahmyr Gibbs with the 12th pick in the draft. Devon Achane, a third-round pick, probably not going to be heavily involved early on in the season. So I do think that Raheem Mostert is probably going to be a 55, 60, 70% opportunity share guy this week in a very good game script against the Los Angeles Chargers. So he is one of my favorite starts. Nearly made my start of the week as well. Running back 20 for me here is Rachaad White. Workload will be really the only thing that I'm watching with Rachaad White. Baker Mayfield actually fed Christian McCaffrey quite a bit when he was the starter in Carolina and Christian McCaffrey was still there at the beginning of the season. That will definitely be crucial for Rachaad White because, as I've talked about pretty much all offseason, I don't believe that Rachaad White is the best pure runner on his team even. I think Sean Tucker is a better pure runner than he is. But I will say, if Rachaad White is going to get 4, 5, 6 targets a game, he's definitely going to be a guy that pays off at his ADP where you guys probably drafted him. Vikings were a bottom half of the league defense against the run last year, and the Bucs are likely playing catch up against the Vikings offense that I expect to be able to score against the Buccaneers defense. So Rachaad White, definitely a pretty solid start this week, especially in full PPR. Running back 21 for me is Miles Sanders. I dinged Miles Sanders here a little bit. He probably should be a little bit higher, but the reason I put him down a little is because I don't totally know what to expect out of his workload right away. They keep saying that he's going to be the workhorse, he's going to be the main back, but honestly, Miles Sanders has gotten injured anytime that's been the case, so I really want to see how this workload shakes out before I rank Miles Sanders really aggressively. We also have a rookie quarterback in his first start, and as much as I love Bryce Young, I don't think he's going to come in and light the world on fire the first NFL game that he has against a Falcons team that should be pretty good, should be able to score points on the other side of the ball. Vegas has Carolina implied for just 18 points right now, which is one of the lowest on the entire slate, and this game has 74% of the cash on the under, and the over-under is already low at 39.5. So if you can help it, I probably wouldn't be firing up too many players from the Atlanta Falcons-Carolina Panthers game if you have better options in better game environments in a similarly ranked tier. Najee Harris here, running back 22. 49ers were the best run defense in the NFL last year against fantasy running backs. So already I'm kind of worried about Najee Harris's efficiency because he isn't very good. Then on top of that, he has a really bad matchup. Najee Harris's workload is also something that I will be watching because we saw in the preseason that Jaylen Warren was involved as like a 35-40% split. Is that going to keep itself up? Was that just a matter of keeping Najee Harris fresh in the preseason and he's just going to go back to his full, fledged workhorse role? Or is he going to actually be in kind of a backfield split with Jaylen Warren? Because that really hurts Najee Harris's bottom line, which is why we were ranking him lower coming into the season, and which is why I'm ranking him a little bit lower coming into this week as well. Najee Harris, somebody that I'm definitely going to be monitoring. If he has a big game and a limited workload, I'm probably going to be looking to sell high. If he has a bad game, I'm probably not going to be looking to buy. RB23 towards the end of this tier here, we have David Montgomery, who of course played on Thursday Night Football as well. He dominated the snaps with Jahmyr Gibbs. He scored a touchdown, had 13.4 PPR points in that game. I expect his role to diminish though, as Jahmyr Gibbs grows to be more involved as a rookie running back as the season goes along. We expect him to. David Montgomery, if you guys have him on your roster and people are just looking at the bottom line, 75% of the snaps, 13.4 PPR points per game, I would definitely be looking to sell high and try and tier up if you can. If one of these guys that I talked about previously has a bad week, let's say Rachaad White has a down game, or Dameon Pierce has a bad game, or J.K. Dobbins has a bad game, or something like that, you might be able to use David Montgomery in a package deal to get up to one of those running backs. Next, we get into running back 24 for me, which is James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Super interested to see the split here because in the preseason, we saw James Cook get workhorse usage, and I really didn't expect to see that because he's a smaller back, and we didn't really have a whole lot of Damian Harris in the preseason to go off of. So it's hard to just take away, this is going to be James Cook's role, and he's going to be the workhorse for the Buffalo Bills, because I think if we knew that, we would have all been drafting him a lot higher than where he was actually going. But I can't start this guy as like a high-end RB2 or a low-end RB1 like some people project him to be unless I see that usage in the preseason carry over to the regular season, which I don't tend to think is going to happen. I think that Damian Harris is going to be more involved, and also the New York Jets defense is a tough nut to crack as well, so I don't think, high efficiency-wise is what I'm expecting in this game against the Jets on Monday night. And finally, we get into the flex plays. So this is the final tier of the video, and then we'll talk about the guys that are dealing with injuries and talk about the guys that I think are more deeper league plays. Running back 25 for me is DeAndre Swift. Definitely not a great game environment with this Eagles-Patriots game. 98% of the money right now is on the under of 45, so the Sharps are absolutely hammering the under in this game, which might speak more to the New England Patriots' lack of ability to score than it does to the Philadelphia Eagles. But for Swift, I'm leaning on the fact that he was the Eagles' starter during the preseason. He was the guy who got the night off at the end of the preseason while Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell and those guys had to play in those preseason games. The Eagles wide receivers will probably also struggle against the Patriots defense because they are very good against the pass, but not so much against the run. This defense is designed not to throw against them, and we all know the saying about Bill Belichick, he takes away your best weapons, and for that, it is Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and those guys. So I do think that if they're going to let somebody beat them, it could be DeAndre Swift out of the backfield in the short passing game or on the ground. I was actually quite close to making DeAndre Swift my start of the week because I do think he's a sneaky good play this week. And then as far as the flex play tier at the end here, we also have Cam Akers and James Conner. Both of these guys are volume plays, but they do lose some value facing tough defenses that they're going up against, and both teams aren't expected to score a lot of points. We have a Rams offense with no Cooper Kupp. James Conner is on the Cardinals, who has Josh Dobbs starting for them. So not very high expectations for either of those guys, but they are pretty good volume plays if you have to throw somebody out there. Javonte and Breece Hall, of course, we are waiting to see what the backfield split is with these guys. I expect that Samaje Perine will be more involved now than he will be later in the season, and I expect Dalvin Cook to be more involved now than he will be later in the season on the Jets side of things. Of the two ACL bros, I pick Javonte Williams. I would definitely start him over Breece Hall because the tougher matchup for Breece against the Buffalo Bills and the fact that his backfield competition is better with Dalvin Cook makes me lean towards Javonte Williams. Plus, we saw Javonte Williams play in the preseason and we didn't see Breece Hall play in the preseason. So definitely tough. I don't really want to start either of those guys if I can help it. And everybody, again, that I've said previous to this part of the video, I would start over those guys. But I will say I'm not going to go crazy and start like Deion Jackson over these guys. I'm not going to go crazy and start A.J. Dillon over these guys. I would rather risk it with them as like low-end RB2, high-end RB3 type of guys. Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson, that's where it becomes a decision point. I think both of these guys are in a good spot, and they're up here all the way in the top 30 for me because we have a Washington Commanders offense who's a 7-point favorite against the Arizona Cardinals, who are probably the worst team in the entire NFL, one of the worst defenses in the league, and don't expect to be able to move the ball very much on offense. They should dominate the time of possession. This could be a very big Brian Robinson gets 25 carries to salt this game away type of game, but not a lot of points expected in this one either. The Sharps are actually hammering the under right now. 85% of the cash is on the under, and it's the lowest of the slate at 38 points, so not expected to put up a lot of points in this game. Again, that could be more of an indictment of the Arizona Cardinals, but I will say Gibson and B-Rob are pretty decent starts. And then when we get to will they play tier, so this tier every single week will be the players we have injury question marks about, and since this video is going to be coming out on Saturday, we should have a pretty good idea of whether or not players are going to play, who's ruled out, and kind of what the injury reports look like. But I will say it's week 1 and nobody's really suffered an injury yet. We did have Ramondre Stevenson pop up on the injury report with an undisclosed injury. Sounds like he'll be good to go. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Kenneth Walker does not carry an injury designation going into Sunday's game as well, so I'm not really worried about him. But, of course, it's the running back position. We're going to have a lot of players to talk about as the season goes along at this position in the will they play tier. But for now, we don't really have anybody that we need to talk about. So, closing out this video, we have 5 deep league flexes. So, if you guys are without Cooper Kupp or maybe Christian Watson or Jerry Jeudy or Kenneth Walker, if he's out, he probably won't be, but if you guys are without some of those players that are going to be out this week, these are some guys that maybe you have on your bench or maybe you can get on the waiver wire that you could throw into your lineup and put out there to help yourself win this week. So Khalil Herbert, good volume early on in the year. I expect Roschon Johnson and Deontay Foreman to get involved as the season goes along. But week 1, I think Khalil Herbert will be a pretty good 50 to 55% snap share guy. Deion Jackson of the Indianapolis Colts, don't totally love that Zach Moss is practicing and he's questionable officially for the game. But I would bet that Deion Jackson has a majority share of the Colts backfield, but I don't think he's going to be like some workhorse. I think he'll probably just have a decent amount of the work and they'll kind of move on from there. Then we get into Dalvin Cook, who I'm not really excited about, but Breece Hall might be eased in. Don't really love Dalvin Cook, but I think you could do worse this week if you're desperate. And then Jamal Williams, also a pretty decent option this week. It's a brutal matchup against the Tennessee Titans and a slow game pace and a slow, low over-under type of game, but he does figure to get the majority of the work with Kendre Miller coming in questionable. Of course, Alvin Kamara suspended. So Jamal Williams probably, 15 to 20 touch workload incoming for him. You could even make the argument that he would belong way higher on this list just given the workload that we're looking at seeing there. So hopefully you guys got some value from this video. Hopefully I helped you set your running back position in your lineup. If you have any flex questions, if you have any, other questions, leave them down below in the comments section. If you want our weekly rankings and you want to know who you should start and who you should sit on any given week without having to leave comments or join our live streams to get answers, you can definitely check that out. Link down below in the pinned comment for that. You can sign up on Underdog Fantasy using the promo code FSE. $10 deposit will get you access to our weekly rankings as well as our rest of season rankings when those come out. When you sign up over there, you'll have 100% back on whatever you put in. So if you put in $10, you'll have 20 on the site to play with. You'll get our rankings for free. It's a win-win for everybody. So if that interests you, link down below in the pinned comment. If you already have an Underdog account or if you live in a place where you can't play Underdog, you can also get access to our weekly rankings as well as our rest of season rankings when those come out by going to flockfantasy.com, our site. Promo code FSE will get you 30% off over there. You get the bonus content from us. You get the bonus content from Mason over at the Flock Network. You get your bonus content from Fantasyland and Dynastyland. Chris and Pierre over at Endgame. Dynasty Domain guys over there as well doing a lot of great work. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But with that being said, peace out and we'll talk to you soon.